This is Insight Analytica Episode 2 by Interzone Analysis. Psychopaths and how they operate. Now, this is a little bit of a detour episode from the general theme, though it all comes together from my first episode relating to the world of clandestine foreign intelligence operations and the books of John Le Carre and the George Smiley series, in particular Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, because I have come to realize that people, through no fault of their own, have very little actual information about psychopaths and how they operate and what they essentially are. And there is a lot of information out there. However, because of complex reasons I'm going to go into in this podcast, it is very difficult to actually find good answers for this that are actually able to be utilized in real life, essentially. Now, anybody who knows my work knows I've spent a very long time involved in many different circles that were extremely violent. In particular, my undistinguished careers in as a foreign correspondent, also involvement in the lowest level of mostly private intelligence contracting work. But people also know that I was a heavy morphine addict for 15 years. So I had to deal with a lot of the criminal sub-elements of society. And also through a lot of mostly Yugoslav-related Balkan shit I've had as the son of a displaced Serb. I happened to grow up in a place during the 90s where there was mass migration of Croatians and Bosnians, but not Serbians. And so I had to deal with a lot of violence because of the assumption that I was the son of a Serbian war criminal. And because through no fault of their own, particularly the Bosnians, a lot of them had extreme PTSD, literal shell shock, shaking, convulsing because of the mass bombings, all kinds of stuff. And because they're straight out of a war zone. So I have had to be thrust into an extremely violent world from a very young age. Now, psychopaths, the lower functioning ones, of course, gravitate towards criminality, and the higher you go within the criminal underworld, specifically within different narco-terrorist organizations and like it or not, groups, neo-Nazi, paramilitary, terrorist organizations that I grew up with, like Combat 18, a neo-Nazi organization founded by Steve and Charlie Sargent in the UK, and possibly with the involvement of David Mayat, which I won't go into now. I have had a long discussion with David Mayat for quite some time about the history of Combat 18 in the UK. Point being, a lot of them moved to Australia, and I had to deal with them. But even groups like Combat 18, whom wouldn't really consider themselves criminals in the same sense as drug dealers and narco-terrorists, Vietnamese heroin syndicates running out of Hanoi, well, they still sold and injected methamphetamine constantly. And, of course, psychopaths are drawn to all these movements. So, to my far-right neo-Nazi supporters, I've got nothing against you, but you don't just have spooks to be careful of. Psychopaths infiltrate organizations like Combat 18 and organizations like many that you will be involved in, not because they care about things like Arianism, if that be your thing, Templarism, and neo-Nazism. They don't care. They infiltrate it for the purposes of self-gratification through manipulation, domination, and control. 3 words that I'm going to be repeating again and again and again, because psychopaths operate in very readable and tangible cycles that, once aware of it, is extremely easy to spot. And there's a metaphysical element to all this too, because there is something about real psychopaths that is not human. They are intra-species predators. They have actual physiological effects on an individual. So before I really start this, I want to make something perfectly clear, and I need people to listen to me on this. Actual psychopaths are extremely rare. So don't go accusing people of psychopathy because they have traits or elements of what I'm going to lay out, because the likelihood of them actually being a true psychopath is going to be extremely low, and it is a life-destroying thing to be accused of. And another misconception, psychopaths aren't particularly all that brilliant or intelligent at all. They have been glorified in the media and in film, of course, in culture, and even in a weird way by academia, because these industries are run by psychopaths. Because bureaucratic, and same with the government, same with most private industry, psychopaths, similar to the idea of insight roles in the Order of Nine Angles, although, oh, and by the way, edgelord niners in the US, if you're going around saying you're a psychopath, you're not a fucking psychopath. You're an idiot. Psychopaths don't want to be outed as psychopaths. unless they gain something from it, because there's literally nothing to gain from it. A diagnosis is quite life-destroying. Now, these industries, psychopaths cynically move through by doing nothing but destroying, manipulating, gaslighting, and dominating their environment, stealing and using the creativity of other people, then destroying them, turning other people against others, and then they climb the ladder very easily because they have absolutely no compassion or human decency. They have empathy, though, and this is another misconception. Empathy is what birds that can fly in like fighter pilots in a triangular pattern. That's empathy. Compassion is what psychopaths don't have. So why the hell am I qualified to talk about this? Well, because I've had to deal with psychopaths for a very, very long time, and also I have studied these people as a means to understand human psychology, because especially sexual sadistic psychopathic serial killers, if you understand how they operate, you start being able to cross-transfer that information onto less extreme individuals and see the same pathological manifestations, but to a smaller degree, and then it's easier to read people. This is just another means of being able to effectively utilize intelligence, tradecraft, specifically human, for the purposes of reading body language, having the ability to cold read people, essentially, for the purposes of what the FBI call profiling, which isn't the best word for it, but yeah, and criminals who aren't psychopaths, and just because somebody's killed 54 people, if they're a mafioso, doesn't mean they're psychopaths. The majority of these guys in the criminal world who have done significant amounts of murders, it's dispassionate. It's part of that world. It's war. There's a difference between killing somebody that is going to inform on an entire organization and disappearing them permanently than stalking random people in your car every night for a month until you find essentially not the perfect victim, because psychopaths are generally cowards. Well, they are cowards, but yeah, they go by opportunity, and they try and find a victim, usually through, a lot of the time it's even with organized sexual sadistic psychopathic serial killers, it is opportunistic killing. But there's a difference between shooting somebody with a .22 Beretta M9 and with a suppressor in the back of the head and walking away, than spending a month looking at sex workers in the street and getting one in your car and playing yourself down to be a gentle, nervous client to make them feel like to make them feel a bit more comfortable that you're not going to be, rough. And then when you are going down on them, suddenly you have a ligature around your neck within 2 seconds, and it is being tightened very quickly, ripped up, and then for the next 10 hours you're going to be brought to the point of death. And it takes usually between, depending on if you actually crush the esophagus and really mess things up, but they don't, because they usually get a good feel of how much pressure to utilize. They don't usually use manual strangulation because it's extremely difficult to kill a grown woman with manual strangulation. It's fucking difficult to kill a child with manual strangulation. Takes usually around 7 minutes, and even then you'll have to spend a couple of minutes waiting, continuing to apply it. They don't want that. They want absolute control and domination. So the ability to and to inflict as much psychological and physical pain as possible. And so they'll bring you to the point of death over 7 minutes with a ligature strangulation, and then they'll give you a few breaths, and then they'll do it again. And they'll do this for 10 hours. It is, if anybody who has, like myself, come to a point of almost dying by suffocation through, in my case it was somebody drowning me deliberately. It is an extremely unpleasant, painful and terrifying, powerless and horrible experience, let alone having that go on again and again. They want you to beg to die, but they're not going to do that for you. So shooting someone with a .22 in the back of the head, another fully grown man who has jumped into a world that he understands the stakes are extremely high and he's fucked up. And if you fuck up, this is the price, unless you know another way around it. And even though in the criminal world, usually if they make you have to kill your friend if they fuck up, because it puts them at ease. They're not going to expect, and it's a very difficult thing to do. It's very different from a random woman that you've stalked because you're a absolute cowardly piece of shit, and that you have utilized every form of base manipulation to then take out your absolute hatred and of your usually mother and wife, or wife, because you are too much of a coward to confront in a healthy way your own mother. But these are extreme individuals. There's a very big difference between killing somebody in a context of war, and if in the criminal world, it's war. It is not. It is just guerrilla warfare in the streets. There is no fucking difference. You can't. Yeah, you can sanction killing in war. There's rules of engagement. You don't think that shit applies to mafiosos, to fucking organized criminal narco syndicates? There's rules. Just because you're doing it anyway. Most veterans that I ran with were in between tours in Afghanistan, coming back from Afghanistan, and because they're so used to a certain way of living, so they wouldn't. A big problem with a lot of these guys, especially who had heavy contact over long periods, Special Forces, case of Australia, the 2nd Commando Regiment in Australian Special Operations Command, and the Special Air Service Regiment, or the SASR. These guys, when they come back, if someone calls them a cunt at a bar, I mean, some random drunk dickhead, and throws a punch at them, they just drop them, they just kill them. And I knew this happened. This happened a lot. And because you're not trained to disarm like the police are meant to. You're not trained to... You're trained to kill. Because in the context of war, if you're needing to be in a situation of hand-to-hand combat, you cannot be going, I better think and make sure I go through the rules so I don't get in trouble and act, no, you kill. You kill. So a lot of these guys ended up running in criminal circles purely because it's... And also a lot of them are addicted to heroin because of Afghanistan, and so these guys would and these guys aren't psychopaths at all. A lot of it was so they wouldn't accidentally kill some random guy at a bar who calls them a cunt and tries to fight them. They would do it. Yeah, there's a big difference, and so running in different circles for a very long period of time, you start to observe certain behaviors. And if you read a lot of, especially from the context of law, investigative side of things, law enforcement, John Douglas's books, the FBI Profiler, that the TV show, which has very little basis in reality, however, shows some. The very popular TV show Mindhunter is based upon the behavioral science unit of the FBI, and the active use of profiling in active investigations of sexual sadistic psychopathic serial murderers. And John Douglas, his books, they're brilliant reads if you want to understand a lot of this stuff. But even then, this is just from a pure law enforcement perspective on sexual psychopathic killers. How do you deal with a psychopath that is not a sexual sadistic psychopathic serial killer not a Vietnamese heroin narco-terrorist syndicate killer running a narco trade, or a warlord in Gahor province of Afghanistan, defying Taliban coalition and local tribal forces. Well, that's what I realize people have very little understanding of. So, how psychopaths operate essentially is a psychopath has no internal personality complex. Now, this isn't the NPC thing. I know there's some studies that some people don't have internal thought processes, like when you go, I wonder if I should have that or that in your head. Some people don't have that, which is terrifying. No, psychopaths, they have no personality complex. There's nothing there. So you're essentially born, and now I'm going to explain another concept that has to be explained with this, which is not an academic term, but it's a useful one, proto-psychopathy. To give context. But true psychopaths, imagine being born where you not only feel nothing, but you don't actually have any personality, and there is just nothing there. But you do feel something when certain intense situations bring it up. A release of dopamine and norepinephrine. So violence might bring it up, control, manipulation, these things. So given that you have nothing there, you have to start pretending like you do very quickly. Otherwise, people are going to start going, this kid is fucking weird. Something fucked up about this kid. And then, you're going to have a bad time. They don't want to be detected. They know that there is something wrong because they have to fake everything, which would be incredibly, though they don't feel stress in the same way, but horrible thing to deal with. But I have absolutely no compassion, empathy, or human decency towards these animals, and you shouldn't either. Anyway, so they are master manipulators in the sense of they have to fake every element of their entire personality from childhood to pass as not being completely void. So they study body language. This is all instinctual. This is all going to the one part of the brain that the psychopath utilizes, which is the amygdala. People call it the reptilian complex of the brain. And how we know this is psychopaths going through MRIs with certain stimulation. They have their amygdala is lit up, their prefrontal cortex, there is just nothing going on there. Now, unlike the prefrontal cortex is what is impulse control. It's where dopamine and norepinephrine, epinephrine, adrenaline, stuff like that. And now, people with certain neurological issues, you can. I'm not going to argue whether it's real or not. I got diagnosed with ADHD since childhood. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, a hyperkinetic disorder caused by a lack of essentially activity in the prefrontal cortex. And so I am prescribed amphetamine medication because amphetamine releases dopamine and norepinephrine, which lights up my prefrontal cortex, allowing me for better concentration, impulse control, so I don't do as much stupid things, and also hyperactivity. Now, the difference between a psychopath and my brain in an MRI is my prefrontal cortex without speed won't light up. However, a psychopath does when they choose not to use it. They can use it. That's the difference. Now, psychopaths medically usually have high testosterone levels, but that is not a good correlation. High testosterone usually calms guys down. Most of the anabolic steroid abuse, bullshit, roid rage stuff is caused by estrogen, high levels of estrogen and progesterone, by bodybuilders who fuck up by using high doses of testosterone without aromatase inhibitors that stop it from converting to estrogen. So, but these are just, there's literally very little medical tangible knowledge of what psychopathy is. Other than that, essentially now, psychopaths they also have a habit of, and goes back to the amygdala. They have a stare. Now it's not. They have two stares. One is a very glazed over look where it's like they're looking at nothing. Now this isn't 1,000-yard stare of a guy in having who's completely going through combat PTSD. Like the famous picture by a photographer during the Vietnam War in a battle for the Citadel of Wei of the US Marine Corps rifleman who is completely shell-shocked holding a M16 looking into nothing. No, that guy is having extreme shell shock, PTSD, 1,000-yard stare. No, this is like a glazed over look of just like there's just nothing happening. And that's because there isn't. This is when they're in the best analogy for it is they're like a lizard that is bathing on a rock to get sunlight. There's nothing going on to stimulate them, so they're just there's literally nothing happening there. they have that glazed over weird lizard look. Because they're like the lizard bathing on the rock. Now, none of this shit I'm talking about has anything to do with the reptilian David Icke shit. I'm bringing... This is not conspiracy. This is not... This is just me trying to lay it out. Now, there's another stare that the psychopath has that is absolutely terrifying. And that is when you actually see what they really are. And this is what is called when the mask of sanity slips. Where a psychopath will suddenly look at you, and for no reason, or they will have a look that is... There is no tangible way of explaining this stare. It is like... it is pure hatred. And it is so intense and inhuman that it takes you back. The best way, I guess, to get an idea is... I think there's a good photo of the serial killer John Wayne Gacy, who in the 70s... murdered a lot of young men. He was a pederast and buried them in his crawl space in Chicago. There's a picture of him that kind of shows that stare of absolute hatred at the psychopath. Another good way of the kind of have an idea of what these guys are like. The court confessions of Dennis Rader, a serial killer known under his moniker BTK, or Bind, Torture, Kill, who operated in Wichita, Kansas from 1974 to around 2004. Until he, via FBI psychological profiling techniques, essentially got him to slip up finally after 30 years of his court video and how he talks and how matter-of-fact they are about it all. But you can see his eyes, his face. It's useful. It's a very interesting watch. Anyway, though that's a basic foundation of what medically and academically, really, other than Dr. Robert Hare's psychopathy checklist, which is a essentially very simplistic checklist for psychologists to gauge if you're a psychopath. Now, I've had this done on me, and I've had a lot of friends that have had this done on them, and Dr. Robert Hare's work is quite good, but his checklist is thoroughly inadequate, because I score higher than Ted Bundy, whom is a absolutely abhorrent fucking psychopathic killer, and yeah, I'm not a psychopath at all. I just have very high psychopathic traits. And that's where the concept of proto-psychopathy comes in, which I'll have to briefly explain. Psychopaths have absolutely no issues with sleep, nor trauma, because psychopaths they don't have any human decency or compassion. they understand the pain they're inflicting too. They have empathy. So, like I said, that's a misconception that they don't have empathy. They do. They don't care. And it's not personal either. It's just business for them. Another quote. A proto-psychopath is somebody that has been essentially thrust into an environment where psychopaths are dominating it, or an environment like war where high psychopathic traits have to be very quickly learned in order to survive. And so you start very quickly adapting to these environments via these pathological traits manifesting. Now, the ones that don't adapt and don't have, you have to have these traits inherently too to really manifest them. So I don't give a shit about the nature-nurture argument. My dad has very high psychopathic traits. My grandfather, very high psychopathic traits. However, from very complex backgrounds and war veterans from Serbia and shit like that. But there is a genetic element to it. And if you're forced into these environments where those traits are necessary, they get switched on. And so high intensity criminal environments in organized criminality, war, and also even in the civil service, in corporate entities on a lesser degree in these areas, these traits start to develop or manifest sometimes in people because the environment makes it necessary. So, and if you're going through any form of special forces recruitment, I don't know what it is in America, the process is. In Australia, it's through the Australian Army. I'm not a veteran. I was dishonorably discharged. But I was going through the direct special forces recruitment scheme. And because of the insane amount of not just IQ, intelligence testing, but personality testing, I had a very specific personality type. Also, this is one that corporations look for a lot. I forget what it's called in that outside of the military context, but within the corporate context, there's like 0.01% of people have it. I knew a Jewish construction engineer, essentially hired purely because of having, as he put it, being a psychopath and having this personality type. Though he wasn't a psychopath because he actually had genuine compassion and didn't leave a trail of nothing but destruction behind him, and actually improved my life and didn't suck all my energy away. So, in particular in the military context, if you have the ability to think tactically, now I can't go into this shit, and people who give me shit about me saying I can't go into shit, grow the fuck up. Stop complaining to me about this. I can't go into some stuff involving my periods of time overseas because it involves networks of people that I don't want fucking harassed. It involves my ex-wife, whom I don't want fucking harassed and to deal with stupid, childish bullshit. It also, there's a thing called NDAs, or non-disclosure agreements. There's also, if you go through any form of military recruitment, you are under the strictest, especially if you, in Australia, there used to be I'm not involved in this stuff anymore. In the ADF, there was the direct, for the Australian Army, Special Operations Command, especially because it was wartime, the Direct Special Forces Recruitment Scheme, and that shit is completely classified. It's prison for me to disclose it. I can disclose shit in CVs if I'm applying for certain work in the Australian public service, in particular in intelligence, because I can put it in confidence, but it's only one agency within the entire country that has a chance of getting access to those files. Now, I'm nothing special. As I said, I'm not a veteran. I was absolutely dishonorably discharged, never to be recalled from military service under any circumstances. I'm not a veteran. But I still went through the Direct Special Forces Recruitment Scheme, which is filled with NDA. Essentially, there's things called non-disclosure agreements. Now, in this context, it's not non-disclosure agreements, it's in confidence, which you put on CVs, which is classified as prison if I disclose the recruitment methods of Australian Special Operations Command. Okay, so it's a little bit reasonable. And also I've had to sign a lot of non-disclosure agreements for work I have done over the years because of petty, stupid reasons mostly too, where I have pissed off people and they have brought lawyers down on me and gone, if you tell anybody about this ever, we're going to make your life, I'll be charged with slander and defamation, even though what I was saying was true. I don't have the money to fucking defend myself against somebody very powerful that has hundreds of thousands of dollars that they can throw into the legal fees. They know I don't. So it's either essentially me be ruined and ruin my family financially, or shut the fuck up, never talk about it, sign this shit or you go to prison, even though it's true. So I'm not exactly happy about my fucking circumstances. So to the few individuals, I've given immensely personal information about myself, about being about being a fucking morphine addict, about being involved in neo-Nazi or terrorist organizations, certainly when I was a teenager, about being involved in so much stuff I'm not happy or proud about, that is incredibly self-damaging and professionally damaging, by the way. Grow the fuck up. The world doesn't work that way, and I don't owe you my fucking entire personal history, because no matter what I say, it's not going to be satisfying anyway. Because even with, if I broke the non-disclosure agreements, the shit that is permanently going to be in confidence, and by the way, I know veterans, guys that did 7 tours in Afghanistan, 3 in Iraq, 2 in East Timor, who can't get their own fucking service record files in Australia because they were involved in Operation Anaconda in 2002 in Afghanistan, a monumental fuck up, and one of the worst fuck ups in modern military history. And this individual has been slandered for more than 10 years. And he can't even defend himself against the slander because his service record won't be given to him. And this is not and now he's being charged with war crimes, even though the circumstances behind the war crime, it's not a fucking war crime. Not saying that shit didn't happen, but yeah, I have to go into Afghanistan one day because there is so much stuff I know. And I've given my word to a lot of dead veterans that I would tell their fucking stories. I'll say one thing. In the list of Australian 2nd Commando Regiment, Australian war crimes in Afghanistan, there's one where 2 Afghan National Guard were killed by somebody in the 2nd Commando Regiment. Alright, let me give you context for that. They don't give context in this. And I know this is a detour, but I think I feel morally obligated to say this one thing. They just give the list. They give a reference to the information. You click the reference is not available to the general public. Well, I know what happened there. I'm not giving the fucking date. I have enough shit to deal with than having more bullshit from fucking ASIO. Anyway, those 2 Afghan National Guard guys got clipped. And okay, what happened essentially is there used to be a night of the week. Now the Taliban outlawed this. Coalition didn't. Where the Afghan National Guard would fuck teenage boys. They were pederasts, right? However, these boys were mostly orphaned street kids who were 11, 12 years old. And these were, officers. And what they would do is dose them up with heroin without them knowing. So see, this is what a psychopath does. They take advantage. They are opportunistic. So if they want absolute control, a psychopath in Afghanistan is more likely to join the Afghan National Guard than the Taliban, because the Taliban outlaw every fucking thing that they want to do. You don't have absolute control in the same way with regards to the Taliban. Afghan National Guard, though, you're a fucking officer. You now have permission to do shit again. So it's not even about sexuality with this. A lot of it is with psychopaths. manipulation, and domination, and control. So, because they're cowards and, yeah, they have the control of fully grown men as officers, right? And the guy I'm talking about was quite high up. Now, he had like a harem of fucking teenage orphaned boys that he had dosed their fucking tea up with heroin, so they were physically in horrendous withdrawals if they tried to leave him. Now, one escaped, right? So what happened is this psychopath, this fucking idiot, put a bounty on this kid because, and by the way, yeah, this guy is a psychopath, 100%. Psychopaths aren't intelligent, they're fucking stupid and petty. He lost control of this kid. The kid didn't push through and ran, even though he was in horrendous heroin withdrawal. Nowhere to go. So what happened is, he was so stupid, he didn't just pull Afghan National Guard guys up to find this kid and kill him or bring him back. He called on some Australians in the 2nd Commando Regiment that I can't go into, and offered 10,000 USD to bring his favourite back. Now, he'd made the same offer to 2 Afghan National Guard, and they were already running off after the kid. So what happened is, now my friend and possibly others, I can't confirm or deny or say anything about that. The service pistol for the 2nd Commando Regiment is a Heckler & Koch Tactical USP 45 pistol, hollow point. And my friend took the contract, ran, and possibly others were involved. I don't know. Now here, yeah, I'm being fucking enigmatic and moving the issue. You can give me shit for that. I'm not going to implicate any alleged individuals that were associated. Anyway, they, instead of chasing after the kid, they chased after the 2 Afghan National Guard guys. I shouldn't, by they I mean just one person, of course. And so what happened is, they were closing in on the kid. My friend closed in on them, pulled out his Heckler & Koch Tactical USP 45, and double tapped 1, 2 in the chest, 1 in the head, pop, 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 and then dropped the other, and the kid got away. Now this is the part they leave out. The officer that gave out this contract got the top portion of his head disconnected and reincarnated into the next one that same night too. But that's not in the War Crimes Tribunal. They had to move the entire fucking Australian Army Special Operation barracks outside of Kandahar, I think, back in the day, away from the Afghan National Guard because of the, I believe it was Thursday night, pederastic fucking, because shit like this was happening. But that's a good example of a psychopath. He got himself killed. He got 2 others killed, and over losing control over one person. They're not brilliant fucking people like they're made out to be in the fucking media. They're petty and they're stupid. All they care about is manipulation, domination, and control. And they will make massive fuck-ups. Yeah, they might be masters at reading people. But proto-psychopathic people like myself for a period and my friend whom committed this quote war crime, he was able to use the technique of playing yourself down and making someone feel safe when your intention is to kill them. Something psychopath, or in less intense situations, use, manipulate, and destroy that person over time, which a psychopath does. So my friend had developed into having such high psychopathic traits that he was able to out-psychopath the psychopath at his own game, make him feel safe that he didn't give a shit about the kid, he just wanted the fucking money, put him at ease. And that's what a psychopath does before they destroy you. So this is how you can tell if someone is a psychopath or not very easily. Psychopaths can't get PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Boy, does my friend have bad PTSD. The theory is, with post-traumatic stress disorder and people like myself and my friend who are fast-tracked through direct special forces recruitment schemes because of personality and intelligence testing making us ideal, because in war you having having the highest psychopathic traits are extremely desirable, especially if on top of that you have strategic and tactical thinking along with logical and rational. They want you. Yeah, they want you very badly if you have a mixture of all these things, and if you score very highly on asymmetrical thinking. Sorry, not asymmetrical. In intelligence testing, IQ testing, forgot what it's called. It's abstract thinking. If you score extremely high in abstract thinking, they usually want you, which is how we all scored. We all were diagnosed with ADHD since childhood. We're all on dexedrine, as they call it in America, since childhood. We're all score incredibly high on Dr. Robert Hare's psychopathy checklist. We all have this specific personality type that corporations look for, that 0.01% or something of population have, but in a military context where strategic and tactical thinking simultaneously, meaning you are able to see the strategize on the long term whilst being able to adapt and utilize things on an operational level within the now very quickly on a tactical level. If you can, most people who are street smart, as they call it, who are tactical thinkers, are not very good at strategic thinking. That's why a lot of guys involved in criminality end up being very good at on an operational level, committing murders because, contract killing, enforcement, violence, in La Costa Nostra terms, they're very good at doing the groundwork essentially, but they're not good. They're good soldiers, but they're not good earners because they're not good with strategic thinking. If you, in criminal terms, are able to be if you're a good soldier and a good earner, you rise up in criminal syndicates like nothing else. You see, everything is and fundamentally operates the same because all of these fields are run and created by psychopaths, not because they're good at this shit, but because they're good at maneuvering up to the top. And then everyone has to adapt. You have to adapt to your boss's world. You have to adapt to the corporate world. You have to adapt to the military world. You have to adapt to all this shit. Because psychopaths have already gotten there and changed the corporate environment to one in which they stay at the top and normal people get fucked and ruined. And every single, the civil service, every government agency, every, major private enterprise, corporation, Hollywood, all this shit has, academia in particular, has been completely dominated by psychopaths in the upper echelons of all of these areas because they manipulate, steal, and destroy the lives of actually good people and maneuver themselves up and then change the environment to make sure that people that are actually good get destroyed and that people have to engage in petty and stupid fucking games with each other in order to distract from the absolute abject patheticness of the corporate, of the people in charge, or the absolute lack of ability to create. Psychopaths can't fucking create. Because they can't think, they can't. They don't even have a personality. So how can they create art? They just replicate something else, badly usually, and then, or steal it outright, and then move on. As above, so below. If we actually had a functional society, in the West in particular, we wouldn't be in a situation where the most brilliant people are completely fucked over and ruined or destroyed or killed before they can even reach a point of self-actualization by a horrible, dehumanizing, discompassionate system of control. See, that's why I always use the term systems of control when I'm talking about the greater order of things, the international state system, all this shit. Because the systems of control, that's why to my neo-Nazis, Aryanists, whatever you want, the whole Zog thing, Zionist occupational government, the protocols of the elders of Zion. They're all distractions from, created by, essentially, the systems of control to keep you from actually being in a position of being actually dangerous. It's a distraction. It doesn't matter whom controls it. And by the way, I like to quote a Jewish Israeli friend of mine, whom, by the way, to everybody, don't go schizophrenic. I'm not political. He has never served in the IDF because he essentially was made sure he would not serve in the IDF. He is not a self-hating Jew. He hates his government just as I hate my government. He has a great quote. When I laid out the whole Zog conspiracy theory to him, and also helped him get access to the best translations of Mein Kampf, because my poor friend, it's hard to get a copy of Mein Kampf in Israel for some reason. So I gave him a favor, and I told him that the Ford translation of Mein Kampf is shit. It doesn't express the true, the power of the book. It doesn't translate well. There's a really good edition that the Nazis actually translated themselves that was found into English. But he was going to spend 700 Israeli shekels, which is a lot of fucking shekels, on a copy of Mein Kampf in Russian, so in Cyrillic, because he's a Slav like me. So for a Russian edition of Mein Kampf, he was going to spend a few hundred USD essentially. And I was like, no. But a good quote from my friend that ended up having to give a lecture with a projector from his computer at work the next day after I sent him 10 different versions of Mein Kampf. He actually projected it, forgetting, to a group of Israeli Jews, his computer screen, which had 10 copies of Mein Kampf on it. My poor friend, the abject. No one said anything, and he asked me to think they noticed, and I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, man, they definitely noticed. But how the fuck can we control the world when we can't even control our own fucking country? Alright, it doesn't matter who's in control. The systems of control exist. Domination, manipulation, and control. Okay? That's how the psychopath operates. The systems of control are here. It doesn't matter who fucking put them there. We don't know. They exist. Pontificating on if it's the Zionist occupational government from because certain industries have a lot of connections to Jewish CEOs. Have you looked at every fucking industry? have you done a cross-referential analysis in... Anyway, my point is, it doesn't matter. It's another method to make you be in a state of disassociation and distraction to stop you from achieving your own potential, because that threatens the and they're not elites, they're idiots that are trying to remain in control, and will go to, and they make horrendously stupid mistakes, like the officer trying to pay an Australian special forces officer to go and kill a fucking Afghan boy for some USD, you know. They make ridiculously, openly stupid mistakes when they are losing that control, or there's external pressure, because they're cowards, okay? So, focusing so much on one group, it's just another way of them gaslighting you. If it's distracting you from achieving what you need to in life and creating, then it is fucking irrelevant. Minutia, focusing on stupid things, to, you know, the point of seeing everybody as a secret Jew, and creating nothing but paranoia. And do you think this is conducive to fighting against Zog, if you believe in that? No. Life is fucking hard enough to get the people you care about and yourself through it without being destroyed by these fucking people. Psychopaths. Let alone taking on broad political issues of which you might not have the complex historical understanding of, to be able to truly grasp the situation. This is just a little bit of advice, because I am constantly contacted by people because of my work on the Order of Nine Angles and on David Mayat. And my empathy and compassion for young men that are taken in by extremist movements at a young age and then destroyed by cowardly, sexually inadequate, loser older men. I am sick of seeing young people with young men with amazing fucking potential get ruined by fucking pathetic 45-year-old losers fucking up and then informing on teenagers or men in their early 20s for shit that they didn't even do. Sutter, Martinet Press, all of that shit. The Temple of Blood, the TOBV. And I know I'm using references of FBI's behavioral science unit, which do focus on far-right extremism, not just sexual sadistic psychopathic serial killers. They're a joke now. They're a fucking joke now. But they did good work. So I take what's useful and, yeah, utilize that. So proto-psychopaths, like my friend, when they come back from Afghanistan, and like myself, when we're taken out of extremely violent environments, we start getting PTSD. We start getting it bad. We can't sleep. We have to do. I've had to fall asleep to fans going on all night and audiobooks for a fucking decade. It's one of the only ways I can sleep, because I am processing all the fucked up shit I have seen done and been forced to bear witness to in the context of criminality, gang warfare, old country stuff from the breakup of Yugoslavia, coming back to Australia, causing gang warfare and a war to continue here, which it did, with and then heroin and morphine addiction, being involved in the only decent job on my resume I can go into, which was working for the Australian Securities and Investment Commission on what they would call these days FinInc, financial intelligence, but as a private contractor regarding corrupt loans departments of certain banking and organizations involving the use of intelligence tradecraft, in particular human, infiltrating, and I did that between 2008 to 2012 for just one operation, which I've gone into before enough, but been involved in that overseas in the Islamic world, being a freelance foreign correspondent, dealing with psychopathic killers in the criminal world, in the civil service, in academia too, in private enterprise, in third world developing countries, narco-terrorists dealing with Islamist extremists. And I've even written a book about a novella about my experience with a psychopath over a period of actually, almost 3 years, between 2015 and 2017. where a psychopath did everything possible to kill me and have my life absolutely destroyed in horrendous ways, where over it's the event that essentially brought me out of the criminal world permanently. Yes, I was involved in things, but this brought me out of dealing with, though I just went into even worse shit later. It's amazing. It's because when these people get you, when you've dealt with an actual psychopath, you can be incredibly intelligent, incredibly good at clocking and cold reading people. In this context, with the worst psychopath I've ever dealt with, that was in the context of a normal kind of situation outside of war, though it was war, but you know, in the criminal world, outside the context of having organizational backing in other countries to do really horrendous things to people. In the context of interpersonal relationship that people whom are not part of any of these extreme things can understand, the experience led me to... Oh, and by the way, when you deal with a real psychopath, you... most likely you're not going to survive it. You'll either end up becoming so gaslit. Now, gaslit is a term based upon an old film where a guy psychologically manipulates a woman into going insane by using a gaslight and lying, to the point where she believes that she is insane, when he has in fact made her insane. So the term gaslighting, psychopaths are masters at this, because no matter how fucking seasoned you are, and this is not me giving credit to them, their intelligence or cunning or any of this shit, it's just they don't operate like a human being. Even fucked up killers have normal... They're not going to, just for the sake of a increase in their dopamine and norepinephrine, spend 6 months slowly and incrementally telling you that a wall that is white is blue. And just for the sake of doing it, because they feel nothing, so this gives them a slight rush. You know, where I would, if I was that fucking desperate to feel something in a state of emptiness, you know, I might a bit of cocaine and get a nice rush of dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. and feel like I am a bit of a god for the next 1.5 hours, and then feeling decent, and then normal, with maybe slight tiredness, unless I hit it every fucking 10 minutes. If I'm that dead, but no, they do this shit literally just because, you know, it's not personal either. And that's what makes it so disgusting. If you have gone to a psych ward because someone's convinced you a white wall is blue over 6 months, purely because they're bored, and that entertained them, it causes a bit of an existential reaction if you actually find out what happened. And they do that shit. So most victims of psychopaths are victims. They're not survivors, because they are gaslit so monumentally that psychopaths end up having all these fucking people that are completely under their control, to the point of that person's personality construct that within them themselves is fucking gone. It's almost like a Munchausen by proxy deal. There is nothing there of that person anymore. They're cult leaders. But if you're not entertaining or useful to them anymore, they'll get rid of you. They'll fucking destroy you. Someone who's survived a legitimate actual psychopath has acute physiological psychosomatic reactions for fucking months afterwards. Fatigue, being completely... I mean, I can spot it. I can spot somebody who has gotten away from a psychopath. Usually they don't even know. And that is what has inspired me to do this. And I haven't used any reference material for this other than just from memory, which is why it's a bit scattered. And this is a podcast. This is for me to be casual. I'm going to make a part 2 with this because it's such a massive issue that needs to be talked about. And I've barely scratched the fucking surface of this. And no matter what academic circles you're in, psychiatry and psychology and academia are full of psychopaths. So they don't want people to know how they operate. If a psychopath can get somebody incredibly seasoned to have all the warning signs in their head lighting up, yet still somehow not still go along with what they're doing. And that's what happened to me with the individual in my novella that I wrote in 2022. And by the way, this situation with my psychopath in this context, because I've dealt with so many. Now, I do not put that label out there lightly. As I said earlier, it's a life-destroying label. Most people, and that's why I brought up the idea of proto-psychopathy. Because people like me are mislabeled as psychopaths a lot. However, people like me have been forced to deal with them and environments that unlock dormant pathological traits within you that are there for survival. a lot of Vietnam veterans say a lovely quote. The jungle is already in you. And that's fucking true. And people exposed to extreme violence and participant, when it's in the context of life and death, in a context of war, essentially, it's you don't really feel that much. It's when it is dehumanized to the extent where it's abject human misery on a industrial scale that you're forced to bear witness to, where it's completely dehumanized and unnecessary and outside the context of war. It's the fucking collateral damage that causes the trauma. Not having to kill somebody in hand-to-hand combat because they're going to fucking kill you. In a way, a lot of it is a sort of weird respect thing, you know. They almost got you, but you know, you just managed to win. But if you have to kill a fully grown man, and you're a fully grown man in a context of having to push yourself to the absolute extreme to survive, and there is no fucking negotiating nor personal element to it. You don't know this person. You have to fucking do it. And it doesn't come without a price. Especially hand-to-hand combat with knives, shit like that. The massive injuries I've sustained over a situation that happened overseas. Jesus Christ. It's been 4 years since this event of 3 guys. I can't go into it, but they people that they were going to kill me. I had to fight with every fucking fiber of my fucking being. Both arms dislocated, fractures in my hands, fingers, collarbone, injuries to my spine, injuries to my fucking stab wounds, injuries to my back, discs, all that shit. Over a very like it took me 3 years to lift my right arm higher than I had no mobility. Like it was brutal. Hand-to-hand combat is fucking brutal. Surviving that shit though, it's something else. There's a weird pride to it. Because fuck. I won. I feel nothing over that event. I've been in 3 years, 4 years of constant pain. Essentially crippled. I'm still having to rehabilitate myself from it, physically. And this is just one altercation. One time. Though this was the most... the longest recovery, but that was because a lot of other things happened. This happened in Central and South Asia in 2019, 2020. But the context of violent to the depersonalization of psychopathy. That's why with sexual sadistic psychopathic killers, or even just people within different like BDSM and SM scenes, they infiltrate those because the object of depersonalization, this is what paraphilias and fetishism is all about. But psychopaths, they depersonalize you and then replace, because they're cowards usually towards their mother, they then take out the hatred onto the paraphilic, depersonalized object. If you're humanized, it ruins it for them. So yeah, I'm going to have a second part to this. But I will read one thing. And with regards to this podcast, with my the spook aesthetic theme, that's all still there. It's just a subject I feel is in desperate need of being like properly fucking talked about again. I will give references at the end of the next podcast, and then I will return to the theme, though this all is interconnected anyway, but the theme... But yeah, I'm going to be going into a lot of O&A stuff again soon. Podcast especially. Because I've only made public about 1% of the fucking work I've done on the O&A. Alright, so this is me reading the appendix of a book, just to give a bit of an idea of and as I said, this is just part 1 of part 2 of this, of focusing on psychopaths. Also, I have a few mujahideen in Afghanistan that I can't neglect. So bringing up Afghanistan is quite important to me because it's a subject that I have to talk about for... And in fact, my intention was never to talk about the O&A. It was purely to bridge the occult to the Taliban, because at that time I was involved in international relations, and I was not going to be able to do interzone related work because I was too fucking busy, unless I talked about things involving the field that I was in, essentially. Because people don't seem to understand that, to me, there's no difference between occultism and international relations IR theory. Because realism in international relations political philosophy is essentially a form of existentialism involving the studying of history and cycles, and knowing that nothing really fundamentally changes in the operational praxis of the international state system and nation states and how they operate, and cross-transferring the historical cycles onto, and it's heavily influenced by Machiavelli, the Prince, by French philosophers whom don't get enough credit sometimes by especially conservative philosophers who are fans of existentialism. Jordan B. Peterson's work, which I haven't been up to date on since 2017, so I can't say on his work currently. Back then, I read his book Trolls Rules for Life. I also read his book Maps of Meaning and watched his lectures because they were very interesting in 2016, 2017. And other than the Jesus stuff, I agree with a lot of his stuff, recognizing that you are essentially a monster, which is true. We all are. The jungle is already in us. You don't need to go to the jungle. It's already there, as the Vietnam veterans put it. However, with regards to him focusing on one of my on Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the masterpiece of and I'm eternally grateful for Jordan B. Peterson for pushing the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander I. Solzhenitsyn, because the unabridged version, it is the most horrific, brilliant piece of not just literature, but actual investigative, it's fucking real, journalism in a sense, and existentialism. And so, my father, of course, he been very connected to his Serbian, and of course my family have a strange connection to Russia. Anyway, point being, as an existentialist, a Russian existentialist, Alexander Solzhenitsyn is absolutely amazing. One Day in the Life of Ivan. I forgot what the book is called. But the Gulag Archipelago, the unabridged, there's a audiobook version. It's only about 80 hours on YouTube. I listened to the entirety of that during COVID at least 12 times. because it's an amazing foundation for understanding reality in a way. Anyway, Jordan B. Peterson gives a lot of shit to the French existentialists, which I understand, especially during the post-modernist kind of period and their praise of communism. However, he has thoroughly neglected the fact that the best piece of realist international relations political theory comes from a French... It is existentialism, realism. And a French realist... And I've forgotten the name of the book, but it's fucking like 800 pages, but highly recommended. And a very good foundation of both classical and modern realist. There's no difference between occultism and existentialism. It's just occultism leads to more delusion and self-annihilation. Existentialism is a form of occultism. There's no fucking difference to me. It's same with the spook stuff. But anyway, I'll end this, and I'll give references to this book and others in the next podcast. Okay, so this is a little appendix, a handy phrase book on psychopaths. When a psychopath says, "I'll love you until the end of the world," translation, "You'll do for now." When a psychopath says, "I'm so sorry to hear about the death of your father," translation, "Don't spend too long mourning, as I'll get bored and find someone else more fun." When a psychopath says, "You're confusing the issue," translation, "Keep explaining, I've run out of ammo to hit you with." When a psychopath says, "Never mind me, let's talk about you," "No way I'm telling you about the other idiots I've screwed over before we met." "I can't take this anymore," meaning, "Now beg me to come back." "No income tax increases. We'll hide it as a public service charge." "This is my family. I own them." "You really drive me mad. Don't make me hit you. I'll hurt my hand." "We can still be friends. I'm using a screwdriver right now, but you're the best hammer I've ever had. So stay on the shelf where I can get to you. If I need you for something the screwdriver cannot do." When they say thank you, next time bring it sooner. "I love you unconditionally. I heard that on TV. You're the one I've been searching for my entire life. I'm lining you up as my next victim. No one knows you like I do, because you're going to be exactly what I meant you to be. I love hearing you talk about yourself, your life, your hopes and your dreams and fears. Don't mind the recording device in my pocket. I like to make transcripts for future reference. You need me. I want you to feel so completely dependent and incompetent you have to ask my permission to take your next breath. I believe in freedom. Mine, not yours. What do you like about me? Give me an ego hit. I'm running low. Who takes better care of you than I do? You know you can't take care of yourself. He made the big time, all right. But he would have been nothing without me guiding him in the early days. I made fun of him when he bought his first drum kit. You know that's not what I meant, so stop twisting my words. Meaning, twisting words is my thing. You know what I mean. I can't think of anything to brainwash you with right now. It's more fun to watch you figure out how to make me happy. Sort of like watching a gerbil running on a wheel, or maybe an aquarium, relaxing, you know? When a psychopath says, I can see something very special in you. Translation, that I can totally exploit for my own needs. Where did the sweet, fun-loving person I married go? I'm bored. You need to take responsibility for the failure of this relationship because I sure as hell won't. You're the most beautiful woman in the world, inside and out. And every last one of you fall for that line every single time. 6 weeks ago, you were the sweetest and most wonderful person I've ever met. Now I'm having doubts. You used to be so gullible. They all stabbed me in the back, meaning they figured me out. You are so secure and self-confident. I am really attracted to that aspect of you. It is my single-minded mission to make you doubt yourself for the rest of your fucking life. Please talk to me. I think your brainwashing may be wearing off. You drove me away. You figured me out. Oh God, please do anything. Don't do anything horrible like commit suicide. Everyone will blame me. We are implementing these new security measures to protect citizens from terrorists who are threaten your liberty and freedom. Your 4-year-old daughter is wearing My Little Pony underwear, and your 9-year-old son has a birthmark on his left buttock. I love my mother more than anyone on earth because she excuses everything I do. I did it to protect you. I did it to protect me. I've never had this problem before with anyone. I've always had this problem with everyone eventually. We are different people now than we were when we met. I have custom built a new persona and I'm ready to implement it any minute now. Bye. I'll end it with that. Nothing personal, just business. Yeah. That nails it. That absolutely nails it. Yeah, I know I'm regurgitating information from other people. If you know who I'm talking about with regards to some of the stuff I've been going into, along with me doing my usual getting sidetracked by spook shit, espionage, war, and interesting stories. I'm going to give proper references to the person who has done the best work on psychopaths, along with references to other things that are useful with regards to being able to operate in a way where these people are unable to infiltrate, destroy, use, manipulate, and dominate you until you are of no longer use and you are discarded like the used condom that you are to them, because these people aren't fucking human. And if you meet a real psychopath, you know exactly what I'm fucking talking about. That's why I had to establish proto-psychopaths. That's why I had to establish that it's rare, that I had to put it on a scale above an interpersonal level, because to understand them, you have to understand that we are in social constructs created and then taken over by psychopaths that have then restructured them in order to keep you where you are. And if you want to be a real extremist, and actually infiltrate shit and do damage, you're gonna have to fucking deal with psychopaths. And Niner fucking idiot edgelords, if you're going on and on about being a fucking psychopath, you're not one. You're a fucking loser. Because if you're a psychopath, you'll be going on about how pathetic and safe you are, how you're the only person, you know. Pedophiles that utilize the O&A and far-right groups like the Atomwaffen as a brand in order to get 12-year-old girls to create child abuse, self-harm and child pornography for them aren't psychopaths. They're fucking pedophile losers. Yeah, they're utilizing shit. Some might be, yeah, some might be. But pathological behavior, it's different dealing with an actual psychopath than a fucked up pathological disturbed sexual paraphilic piece of shit like a pedophile. And there's only really one way to deal with psychopaths, and it's the same and only effective means of dealing with pedophiles. There's no fucking cure. There is no fucking cure for pedophilia. Which is why it should be a fucking death penalty offense. And I think the reason why we're in a situation where psychopaths have, and people like pedophiles, are able to do what they do and maneuver in the way they have, is because we used to kill psychopaths and pedophiles. However, psychopaths and pedophiles now run the show. So, police won't turn a blind eye anymore. If, like in Afghanistan, you have the constable of a fucking police station, you walk in and they're watching child pornography on their phone and they're showing you. Yeah, the coalition, I'm not talking shit either. There's a guy in fucking Melbourne I know who was arrested. He was also in the 2nd Commando Regiment, but he was also a private military contractor. One point he got arrested in a drunken or drug-induced bullshit. I forget where in Afghanistan. I think it was Kabul. And he beat the shit out of somebody while he was off his fucking head. And the head of the fucking police station was just watching child pornography and then showing him like it's fucking normal on his fucking phone. Like, hey, look at this, isn't this? And it's like, what the fuck? I mean, that's in a highly dysfunctional situation. So to my Taliban contacts and my detractors and the idiot Niners that seem to forget on Twitter that a lot of guys in the satanic front got scared of me because they were posting shit about Al-Aqsa and about Mecca and wanting to make it a satanic fucking temple for their blah blah blah. So then I linked a whole bunch of Taliban Mujahideen contacts on Twitter that follow me and added this as a joke. And
they were just celebrating the having their country back, after a few years. So they were posting videos they took of all of hundreds of fucking bodies of guys that they had just dropped. And they re-established control because of the mass incompetence of the Biden administration. And the failure of the United States to realize that the unipolarity of their control in the international state system is gone, and their country is in a state of absolute decline. But, that's a whole nother fucking story. The guy freaked the fuck out and blocked me. It's just a fucking joke. But he clicked on them and saw the videos of these guys holding fucking M4A1 carbines surrounded by dead bodies, celebrating and dancing. So to Satanic Front guy, his name I won't mention, take a fucking joke. If you're gonna post shit that's gonna piss Muslims off and I send you mujahideen, why the fuck do you think I am that much of the... It seems people have a very strange perception of who I am. Everyone knows shit I've done. Of course I have contacts like that. So, anyway, thank you for listening, and I will give proper references in the second part. This is Insone Analysis. Have a good day.